What if the love you long for turned into a painful lesson in disguise? Williams never expected to fall in love again. At 70 years old, he had already walked through the stormy seas of relationships, experienced the joys and heartbreaks of love, and thought he had left romance behind. But loneliness has a way of whispering doubts into even the most content hearts. Then, Stella entered his life, a woman 20 years younger, full of laughter, charm, and energy. She reignited something in him, something he thought was gone forever. But what started as a passionate renewal soon became a journey of self-discovery, filled with painful truths and a realization that would change Williams's life forever. This is not just a love story. This is a lesson in dignity, self-worth, and the power of choosing oneself. Williams's house was quiet, too quiet. The walls carried echoes of laughter from decades past, of family dinners, late-night conversations, and the simple joys of companionship. But now, the silence pressed down on him like an old, familiar weight. His wife, Linda, had passed away 5 years ago. The first year without her had been unbearable, the second slightly less painful. By the fifth, he had learned to live with the loneliness, but he had never truly accepted it. He had friends, hobbies, and even a routine, but something was missing: a connection, a purpose beyond the daily motions of life. One afternoon, at a small cafe near his home, Williams noticed a woman sitting alone, engrossed in a book. She had striking eyes and a presence that filled the room. Something about her drew him in, and before he knew it, their eyes met. Her name was Stella. She was 20 years younger than him, but she carried herself with a confidence and grace that made her seem timeless. They started talking. One conversation turned into two, then into daily meetings. For the first time in years, Williams felt alive. But as his heart began to open once again, he had no idea that love, at this stage in life, would come with unexpected challenges. At first, Williams couldn't believe how easy it was to talk to Stella. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, as if they had known each other for years. She was bright, engaging, and full of ideas that made Williams feel like he was rediscovering life. She spoke of her travels, her ambitions, and her love for art and music. For the first time in years, Williams felt heard not just as an aging man, but as a person with dreams, wisdom, and untold stories. Their connection deepened quickly. They started meeting almost every evening, sometimes for coffee, other times for long walks in the park. Williams found himself looking forward to these moments, feeling a youthful excitement that he thought had long faded. One evening, after a lively dinner, Stella looked at him with a playful glint in her eyes and said, "I hope you know I find you fascinating, Williams. There's something different about you, something men my age don't have." His heart skipped a beat. He had thought about the age difference countless times, wondering if it was too much of a gap. But hearing her say this erased his doubts, at least for now. From that moment, their relationship blossomed into something deeper. Williams was all in. He wanted to make Stella happy in ways that even younger men couldn't. He treated her with a level of patience, devotion, and care that came with age and experience. He introduced her to old jazz records, taught her how to cook traditional meals, and listened intently when she spoke of her career and ambitions. She, in turn, brought a fresh energy into his life. She encouraged him to try new things: modern music, yoga, and even dancing again. She made him feel like he could do anything, like he was truly living again, rather than just existing. But as time passed, small moments of unease began creeping in. They were subtle at first, barely noticeable. A shift in tone, a lingering look of impatience, a comment that stung just a little too much. Williams ignored them, choosing to believe that love was worth the effort, even if it meant adjusting to a few things. What he didn't realize, however, was that love should never feel like an uphill battle for acceptance. At first, the changes were almost imperceptible, tiny, insignificant moments that Williams brushed off as nothing. It started with small jokes about his age. "You're adorable when you try to keep up with me," Stella teased after a long evening walk. She laughed as she said it, and Williams laughed along. But something about the way she said it lingered in his mind. Then, there were the comments about his appearance. "You know, you'd look younger if you dyed your hair," she remarked one day while absent-mindedly running her fingers through his silver strands. "Not that it matters. I like you just the way you are." The words should have been reassuring, but Williams couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't entirely sincere. He had always been comfortable in his skin, accepting the natural changes that came with age. But for the first time in years, he caught himself staring at his reflection longer than usual, wondering if maybe, just maybe, she was right. And then came the silences. At first, Stella was warm and affectionate, always eager to spend time with him. But slowly things changed. She began checking her phone more during their dates, replying to messages with brief nods instead of full conversations. When Williams brought it up, she dismissed it lightly. "Oh, it's just work," she'd say. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart." But Williams did worry. He started noticing other things, the way her smiles faded faster, the way she seemed to be looking for something more, something he wasn't sure he could give. One evening, they went out for dinner at a high-end restaurant Stella had been wanting to visit. Williams had dressed in his best suit, excited to surprise her. But when he arrived, her reaction wasn't what he expected. "You look nice," she said, but the words felt empty, obligatory. Throughout the dinner, she seemed distracted, her attention flitting between her phone and the conversations happening at nearby tables. Williams tried to bring her back, to rekindle the warmth they once shared. But for the first time since they had met, he felt a distance between them, an invisible wall that he couldn't seem to break through. Later that night, as they walked back to the car, Stella made a casual remark that cut deeper than any of her previous words. "You know, sometimes I forget just how much older you are," she said with a small chuckle. "I mean, it's not a big deal, but you do move slower than I'm used to." Williams smiled weakly, pretending it didn't hurt. But inside, something shifted. For the first time, he wondered, was he really enough for her? Williams told himself not to overthink things. Maybe Stella didn't mean to hurt him. Maybe he was just being too sensitive. But the doubts didn't go away, they only grew louder. Stella's subtle critiques became more frequent. "You should try dressing a little more modern," she suggested one day, while flipping through a magazine. "You have great style, but a fresh look wouldn't hurt." At first, Williams took it as a playful suggestion. He even let her take him shopping one afternoon, thinking it might be a fun experience. But as he stood in the fitting room, staring at himself in the mirror wearing a slim-cut jacket that felt unnatural, he realized this wasn't about style. This was about changing him. And it didn't stop there. When they spent time with her friends, he felt invisible. Stella would introduce him with a casual, almost dismissive tone. "This is Williams. He's very special to me. Not boyfriend, not partner, not the love of her life. Just special." He noticed the looks her friends gave him, some curious, some amused, some outright judgmental. It was in their raised eyebrows, in the slight smirks when Stella made a joke about his old-fashioned habits. And yet, Williams stayed. He told himself he could handle it, that Stella was worth it. But the worst came one evening when they were alone. They had just returned from dinner when Stella, sipping a glass of wine, suddenly blurted out, "You know, I sometimes wonder what it would be like if we were the same age." Williams looked at her, his chest tightening. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I mean, don't you ever think about it? If you were younger, how different things might be." He tried to smile. "I don't dwell on what I can't change." Stella sighed, placing her glass down. "I guess I just wonder if I'm missing out on something, you know? I love you, Williams, but sometimes it's hard not to think about what life would be like with someone who could keep up with me in every way." The words stung deeper than any wound. He had given her everything. His time, his energy, his heart. And yet, it still wasn't enough. That night, Williams lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. For the first time since meeting Stella, he wondered, was he holding on to something that was already slipping away? And more importantly, was he willing to lose himself just to keep her? Williams had always considered himself a patient man. He had seen enough in life to know that love required understanding, compromise, and effort. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between them only grew wider. Stella had become colder, her affection more mechanical. She still said the right words, but they lacked warmth. Then, one evening, everything changed. They had spent the day together, but Williams could sense Stella's restlessness. She had been on her phone more than usual, her replies shorter, her laughter forced. And then it happened. As they were sitting on the couch, Stella sighed dramatically and turned to him with an expression Williams had never seen before: pity. "Williams, can I ask you something?" she said, placing her wine glass on the table. He nodded, though his stomach churned. "Do you ever feel like we're just forcing something that isn't meant to be?" His heart clenched. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then sighed. Sometimes I feel like we're in different places in life. Like, I adore you, but..." She trailed off, choosing her words carefully. "But what?" he asked, his voice quiet. She looked at him, then really looked at him. And for the first time, he realized that whatever warmth she once had for him was gone. "But I think maybe I need something different. Someone who can keep up with me. Someone who..." She stopped herself, but the damage was done. Williams felt something break inside him. It wasn't just the words. It was the final confirmation that he had been fighting for something that Stella never truly valued. For so long, he had believed that love meant proving himself. He had ignored the red flags, laughed off the insults, swallowed his pride, and convinced himself that what they had was worth the pain. But at that moment, as Stella sat there looking at him with sympathy rather than love, he realized something life-changing. He was done. Done trying. Done proving. Done loving someone who could never truly see him. Williams took a slow, deep breath, then smiled. Stella blinked, caught off guard. "Williams..." He stood up, feeling lighter than he had in months. "You're right," he said simply. "This isn't meant to be." For a second, Stella's expression flickered. Was that regret? Surprise? Fear? But Williams didn't wait to find out. He picked up his coat, walked to the door, and with one final glance at the woman he had once believed would be his last great love, he walked out. And for the first time in a long, long time, he felt free. As Williams stepped out into the night, he expected to feel grief, regret, or maybe even a twinge of longing. Instead, he felt something entirely different: peace. For the first time in months, the weight on his chest had lifted. The constant need to prove himself, to be someone he wasn't, was gone. He walked to his car in silence, letting the reality of what had just happened settle in. He had let go, and he wasn't broken, but that didn't mean the days that followed were easy. The next morning, Williams woke up and instinctively reached for his phone, half expecting a message from Stella. But there was nothing, and he was okay with that. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, he did something he hadn't done in a long time. He put himself first. He took long walks in the morning, without worrying about whether his pace was too slow for someone else. He reconnected with old friends, people who truly valued him for who he was, not for what he could offer. He picked up an old hobby, woodworking, something he had loved but set aside during his time with Stella. And then, the biggest revelation came. One evening, while sitting by his fireplace, Williams reflected on everything. He had spent so much time trying to be enough for Stella, when in reality, he had been enough all along. The problem had never been him. It had been her inability to see the richness of who he was. His life experience, his wisdom, his quiet confidence. She had been too young in spirit to understand that true love isn't about youth, excitement, or keeping up. It's about respect, appreciation, and knowing when someone is worth holding on to. And she had let go of something priceless. Williams realized then that he hadn't lost anything. She had. With that, he smiled to himself, took a sip of his tea, and for the first time in a long time, he felt completely, undeniably whole. Because love wasn't about chasing someone else's approval. Love was about choosing yourself. Williams's story wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about growth, self-worth, and the realization that love isn't about proving yourself to someone who refuses to see your value. As he moved forward with his life, he reflected on the 5 most important lessons he had learned from his experience with Stella. Lesson 1. Love should never cost your dignity. At first, Williams believed that compromise was a natural part of love. He adjusted his habits, his wardrobe, even his way of thinking, all in an effort to make Stella happy. But what he failed to realize was that love should never require you to shrink yourself. True love is built on mutual respect, not sacrifice. The moment he felt like he was losing pieces of himself to fit into someone else's world, the relationship had already begun to fail. If someone truly loves you, they will embrace who you are and not try to mold you into what they want. Lesson 2. Self-love comes first. Williams had spent months trying to win Stella's approval, but the truth was he didn't need it. His worth wasn't determined by her validation. It wasn't tied to whether or not she found him attractive, exciting, or youthful enough. He had lived a full life. His experiences, his kindness, and his wisdom were enough. If you don't love yourself first, you'll always be searching for approval from others. And that's a losing game. Lesson 3. Loneliness is better than the wrong company. There were times when Williams feared being alone again, that sinking feeling of walking into an empty home, of having no one to share his days with. But what he realized was that being lonely in your own company is far better than being lonely in a relationship. Stella's presence had not filled the void in his life, it had made it worse. He had spent nights questioning his worth, doubting himself, feeling inadequate. When he finally walked away, he was alone, but he was at peace. Sometimes solitude isn't a punishment, it's a blessing. Lesson 4. Experience is a treasure, not a burden. One of the hardest things about being in a relationship with a younger woman was the constant feeling of needing to prove that he wasn't too old. But the reality was, his age was not a disadvantage, it was a gift. He had wisdom. He had lived. He had loved. Stella had seen his age as a limitation, but someone else would see it as a strength. Wrinkles don't diminish a person's worth. Gray hair doesn't erase a lifetime of knowledge. Experience is what makes a person truly valuable. And if someone doesn't see that, they don't deserve a place in your life. Lesson 5. Real love is about mutual effort, not just one person trying. Williams had spent so much time giving his energy, his patience, his emotions all in an effort to hold on to a woman who wasn't willing to meet him halfway. A relationship is not a performance. You shouldn't have to prove your worth every single day. Real love is mutual. It is two people showing up for each other, choosing each other, and working together. If one person is always the one giving, always the one sacrificing, it's not love, it's self-betrayal. Williams's experience had been painful, but it had also been eye-opening. He had learned that love is not about chasing someone who refuses to see your worth. It's about knowing your own worth and never settling for less. And in the end, he walked away with something far more valuable than Stella's love. He walked away with himself. Williams's story serves as a powerful reminder that true love begins with self-respect. No one should have to prove their worth to be loved. If someone doesn't appreciate you for who you are, they don't deserve you. Life is too short to waste time on people who make you feel less than. Walk away from anything that diminishes your light and walk toward a future where you are valued, respected, and cherished. If this story resonated with you, let's keep this conversation going. What are your thoughts on Williams's journey? Have you ever been in a similar situation? Share your experience in the comments below. Like this video if you believe in self-love and dignity in relationships. Subscribe to this channel for more inspiring and thought-provoking stories that will empower you to make the best choices in life. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need this reminder today. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and always choose love that lifts you up, not love that brings you down.